It's a mixed bag, but it does lean more towards the positives when we talk about the state of the Bearcats football program as they head into the Big 12.
Are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There is nothing like the middle of the week when really it is your Friday. That is the case for me, and I hope it is the case for some of you who work Saturday through Wednesday. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day on this Wednesday, May 17th. My name is Alex Frank, your host each and every day here on Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege, and when you enter promo code LockedOnCollege, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. We love Bird Dogs. Happy to have them as a sponsor of the college channel of the Locked On Podcast Network. So, we are now, 108 days away from the football season opener. So, really looking forward to that and every day in between. The Cincinnati Bearcats state of the program. I was asked this question. If you heard my crossover interview with Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars last week, Jake asked me what the state of the Bearcats, sort of what the state of the football program is as they head into the Big 12. And I think it's a really interesting conversation because I think the Bearcats football program is in better hands than maybe some of you think. Some of you might be a little worried that it's falling off a cliff. Some of you might be worried that, it's going to take years to get back to where they were in 2021. The latter might be true. The former is not. The Cincinnati Bearcats football program is actually in really good shape. I'm not saying that means they're going to win the Big 12 this year, but I am saying that they are going to have success in year one. And I define success as a bowl game. I define success as making it to the college, or making it to, I would say making improvements every week. That's what I would say. The Cincinnati Bearcats football program, when you look at it, I do think that the expectations are lower than they've been in previous years. But what's most important here is, and I think this is what contributes to the solid state the program is in, is that the Bearcats have conference stability for the first time in a very long time and maybe ever. Something this program has not had in at least the last 35 years. They're no longer nomads, as Bill Cook said on Facebook. The Bearcats have had 5 conference homes over the last 35 years. But now they're in the Big 12. And if you listen to the news conference yesterday that announced the partnership between Cincy Reigns and Rhinegeist Brewery, a local partnership, and Cincy Lights, which I think is a fantastic initiative. I think it is a fantastic win for the University of Cincinnati. I think it's a fantastic win for Rhinegeist. I think it's a win so much overall for all parties involved. If you watch that news conference, Dan Ward said that the Bearcats now are at the big boys table. The Bearcats now are they're playing better competition every week. They are, they're going to face greater challenges, all for the better. Because the Cincinnati Bearcats finally, I believe, are in a conference where they're not trying to get out of it. They weren't trying to get out of the Big East. Unfortunately, that dissolved into the Big East we know as today, and unfortunately, only select schools stayed. Recruiting is rebounding nicely after the coaching transition. Remember how all of us were worried, including myself? Well, it's rebounding nicely. Bearcats right now have the 18th ranked recruiting class according to 24/7 Sports for 2024. That's really, really good. That's 18th in the country. You can say, well, that's not impressive anymore. They're in the Big 12. Well, yeah, it's impressive. It's top 25. out of 130 teams. So the key to me for this upcoming season is, can the Bearcats survive the transition with the new coach, with the new players, with the new challenges? I would say they have so far survived the offseason. The next step is, can they survive the season and not fall off a cliff? Remember, best case, worst case scenario. And I've talked about this. I had Caroline Fenton on this show from Locked On LSU. Her program went through a first-year head coach last year. The Cincinnati Bearcats, the best case is they exceed expectations. They lay a foundation that they can build off of in year two. That's opposed to the worst-case scenario, which is you damage the program. So we need to see progress made in the first season. You can't just fall off a cliff from 9-3 to 3-9. But what do they have to conquer these challenges? See, all we think about, maybe you think this way, is, oh my gosh, the Big 12 is going to be so much harder than the American. And yeah, it's going to be, but think about what they do have to conquer those challenges. A strong foundation in place based off of what they've done the last 5 years. I made this point to Jake last week in our crossover. I said the Cincinnati Bearcats are only just over a year removed from the college football playoff. That matters. That should matter. Cincinnati Bearcats also have a strong hometown hero core with Deshaun Pace, with Dante Corleone, with Corey Kiner. So many guys who are from this area who are going to be instrumental parts to the team. They have NIL. They have that new partnership, Cincy Lights, fan engagement. These are all excellent, excellent attributes that are going to help carry this team over the hump. All right. Coming up, the Cincinnati Bearcats, there's some news in the transfer portal. Plus, back to the future. I'll explain how after I explain to you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Bird Dog. So, personally, look, I look better and I feel great when wearing Bird Dogs. I just got my pair today. They're stretchy fabric. They make my legs look great, which, I mean, I don't really pay attention to that, but hey, it's good if they do. And they're comfier than my other shorts and pants. How about that? Plus, I can wear them anywhere. Golf course, I broke 100 last week at Clemson, which is good for me, having not played in 6 months. I can wear them to a meeting. Heck, I can wear them to work. I can wear them on a date. Never had a girlfriend. Hopefully someday I will. And when I'm hanging out with friends. So, let's hear from other people who have worn Bird Dogs. Dave Portnoy does pizza reviews wearing Bird Dogs. He talks about how he hates the pizza, but hey, his legs look great in Bird Dogs. College football nerds say they are the perfect pants for dads that have a little extra gut. I won't be that one. Bird Dogs make them look great and feel comfortable. Plus, pardon my take, coach PFT famously never wears pants, and the only shorts he truly loves are Bird Dogs. So if you don't believe him, well, I don't know who you're going to believe. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege, and when you enter promo code LockedOnCollege, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Bird Dogs. All right, thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. For everyday listeners on tomorrow's show, Neil Meyer of the Front Office News is going to join me to talk everything. Apparel, Cincy Lights, transfer portal, day one tour, you name it, all on tomorrow's show, Locked On Bearcats, Neil Meyer of the Front Office News. Speaking of which, there's some news from the transfer portal. The Cincinnati Bearcats landing a commit from the University of Kentucky, an offensive lineman. This is just fantastic news for the Cincinnati Bearcats. Landing an offensive lineman from Kentucky. His name is DeAndre Buford. DeAndre Buford has 3 years of eligibility left, closed out the 2020 cycle as a top 400 four-star recruit, played in all 13 games as a redshirt sophomore last year, experience at right guard and both tackle spots. And according to my colleague Russ Heltman at All Bearcats and Sports Illustrated, will likely compete with John Williams and Philip Wilder for one of the tackle spots. So, the Cincinnati Bearcats have a transfer from Kentucky. And again, you're now landing commits from SEC schools. That's huge. So what this is saying to me is that the Bearcats aren't slowing down just because of a new head coach. They're not slowing down just because they've had a huge roster overhaul, which is expected when you have a head coach. The Cincinnati Bearcats are doing just fine. And what Scott Satterfield and his coaching staff are doing is that it's reminding me of what Wes Miller and his staff are doing. So, DeAndre Buford, huge commit for the University of Cincinnati. So, other news, the Cincinnati Bearcats, and this is, I think a lot of this is going to have to do with basketball. The Cincinnati Bearcats, they have entered into a new apparel contract. This is according to Justin Williams of The Athletic, that will outfit Bearcats men's and women's basketball and Jordan Brand with football and all other sports wearing Nike. It's according to 3 people briefed on the agreement that confirmed it to The Athletic. The new deal will officially be in effect on July 1st and include uniforms for all teams during the upcoming 2023 through 2024 athletic calendar. Of course, that's the Bearcats first as members of the Big 12. So as Justin outlines, it is as he says, a highly coveted return to the Jordan Brand for Bearcats men's basketball, which of course used it from 97 through 2006. And the Bearcats women's team will be wearing these uniforms for the first time. These records were obtained by The Athletic via record request. BSN Sports, a national authorized apparel distributor, the same company with which the Bearcats had the university's most recent Under Armour product supply agreement, first signed in 2020 after Under Armour bought out the remainder of a 10-year, $50 million deal with Cincinnati. So, retail options for Nike and Jordan branded Bearcats apparel are expected to be available this summer. Uniform designs are still being finalized. That is a major, major win for the University of Cincinnati Bearcats. I really think that there is something brewing here. And I know a lot of you are still skeptical about the football program because you've been to the top before. You've experienced this before. Back in 2009 and 2010. But what I would tell you is this time is better. This time is much better. Because even though being in the Big East was fertile ground for the Bearcats, it wasn't what this is. This is the Power 5 in today's era of college football, where if you're not in a Power 5, you really don't have a chance. We like to think you do. Actually, I shouldn't say that because the playoff is expanding in 2024. But what I would tell you is there is just so much going for this program right now, this university. Being in a Power 5 conference, both Nippert and Fifth Third have been renovated. Excuse me. Season tickets have been sold out. Actually, I think that was for last year, but there is tremendous passion with the fan base. There is a lot happening in both programs as far as working the transfer portal, roster assembling. This is a great time to be a Bearcats fan, and I hope that comes Thursday night, starting today in Cleveland and working its way down to Columbus tomorrow. You will see the excitement that is surrounding the Bearcats as they head into the Big 12. All right, coming up, I've got a comparison that involves Travis Kelce and how it's traced back to the Cincinnati Bearcats. We do that next. For many reasons, the Bearcats being at the Big 12 is a great thing. Power 5, exposure, better competition. You feel like you matter. People care. But I was thinking about this for a minute. I was thinking about this. 2 things. One is that the American Athletic Conference recently announced they're going to drop their P6 moniker. And, I think they should because they're going to have a chance, I think, to be a part of the college football playoff once it expands to 12 teams. But what I would also say is, look at the Cincinnati Bearcats and where they were for 10 years. That conference, does anyone really want to be in that conference like Cincinnati and Houston and UCF? It served as a stepping stone for schools like Houston and UCF. But for the University of Cincinnati, didn't it feel like they spent 10 years too many in that conference? And look, things could have turned out differently. The Big East couldn't have seceded. They could have, stayed together, which that wasn't going to happen. The Bearcats could have been accepted by the ACC, whereas some schools were, they weren't. But the Bearcats had to earn their way into the Big 12 when they did. But think about this. Their first year in the AAC, which was 2013, was also the first year post Travis Kelce. And so Travis Kelce played his college football at Cincinnati at a time where there was stability, being in the Big East. And they had rebounded nicely from the fallout of Brian Kelly. Then Travis Kelce leaves. The Bearcats leave the Big East for the American. No one really knows what's going to happen. It's a conference formed out of essentially just, plucking straws or, off the street. But what's interesting to me is the Bearcats, have been somewhat irrelevant over the last 10 years until they finally crashed the college football playoff party. The American Athletic Conference tried to act like a Power 5 member, even though they really weren't. Funny how now that Cincinnati leaves, they dropped the P6 moniker. Now, Travis Kelce plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I said yesterday that the Chiefs have 14 national window games this year. The Kansas City Chiefs have become the Notre Dame of football. And what's funny is the Bearcats beat Notre Dame in 2021. So when I think about this, why are the Chiefs the Notre Dame of football? They're on TV every week. They have an uberly talented roster. They win a lot. They're fun to watch. They have a phenom quarterback. They have a Hall of Fame head coach. They have a fan base that is so passionate within the city they play in and is growing across the country. They play in a nice stadium, an iconic stadium. And the fact that they're in your lives every week. They've become the Notre Dame of football. Notre Dame is on NBC 6 times a year. They're on ABC or ESPN or Fox or CBS or a major network every other game when they play on the road. The Chiefs are becoming that team when they go on the road. They are now an institution. They are a name brand franchise. Interesting what happens when you have a franchise quarterback transcend that. So the fan base is growing. They are consistent winners. Just imagine if the Bearcats can be that. And I think about how the Bearcats beat Notre Dame in 2021. And again, I said this. They've been to the top twice. Don't let a potential setback this time, losing Luke Fickell, ruin the program for multiple years after the fact. And I don't think that will happen. As I mentioned on tomorrow's show, Neil Meyer of the Front Office News joining me to discuss the Bearcats transfer portal, including DeAndre Buford, including the Day 1 tour in Columbus tomorrow, the new partnership with Cincy Reigns and Ryan Geis Brewery, and so much more as we get closer and closer to the start of football season. And then, of course, on Friday, I will give you my biggest takeaways from the Day 1 tour being here in Columbus, where I will get to see it. Bearcats are just 45 days away from officially being members of the Big 12. I'm working on doing something special for that day, which will, of course, involve you. The Bearcats are 108 days away until the season opener, 129 until the Big 12 opener. That's against Oklahoma, of course. Then, of course, the Bengals season opener, 116 days away. Bengals Rams, 130 days away. And the Bengals Chiefs, 228. A happy birthday today goes out to former Bearcats offensive lineman Corey Cunningham, drafted in the 7th round in the 2018 NFL Draft by the Arizona Cardinals, pick number 254 overall. Corey Cunningham is now with the New York Giants. He played in 1 game last year in his career. He has played in 31 games and started 6 in the NFL. Corey Cunningham, happy birthday to him. That is birthday number 28. 28. That's going to do it for me today here on Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Back tomorrow with Neil Meyer, on the Front Office News. Looking forward to that. I'm on Twitter and Frankie_92 ends NNATI, Instagram AlexFrank_, email Alex3Frank@gmail.com. Have a great rest of your day. I'm back tomorrow right here on Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.